We left off the other day with Antony saying in Act 3, Scene 2, line 260 or so, now let it work. Mischief thou art afoot, take thou what course thou wilt. Now, notice that for a moment. When he says, take thou what course thou wilt, what is he implying there? Okay, but who's the who? Who's the you? Mischief. So what does he really mean?
He's sort of set it afoot and he's just going to let it do its thing.
Exactly, but tell me more what that means. What's the mischief that he has set afoot?
Civil war.
Civil war. Okay, he hasn't merely said, go get Brutus or go get Cassius. Okay, mischief means he is opening up Rome to all kinds of problems. Why? What do we see in the beginning of the next act?
Riots.
Okay, riots. What else? Specifically regarding Mark Antony.
He has power now.
And who else?
Octavius and Lepidus.
Mark Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus. Become, quiz, the new, and I'm not sure how you spell this word, triumvirs, I think. Okay? There had been a triumvirate before this. This is called the second triumvirate. The first triumvirate was Pompey the Great, Julius Caesar, and another guy, and I've got it written down here somewhere, Marcus Crassus or something like that. Not the Crassus that's in here. It's another one. Okay? And what happened? Caesar defeated the other two. This is really no more and no less. It's a very, very old idea than what you get in Chaucer's The Pardoner's Tale, where you have the tale of the three brothers, which J.K. Rowling rips off into the Beadle the Bard tales. Okay? What's Shakespeare playing with here? It's the idea that you have people who say they can co-rule. Well, Tolkien deals with this in The Lord of the Rings. Only one hand can wear the ring at once. Co-rulers? What's going to happen?
One's going to have more power than
Human nature's going to kick in and it's going to say, no, I want it all. Okay? Richard II, Bolingbroke. Bolingbroke, a.k.a. Henry IV, Hotspur, Northumberland. Henry V, the three conspirators that we see at the beginning of Henry V and such. Okay? So, 4-1. We see Mark Antony talking with Octavius and Lepidus. Lepidus leaves. And Antony says, this is a slight, unmeritable man. Now, he might mean, and if you're directing this, last summer the Nashville Shakespeare Festival put on Antony Cleopatra. Lepidus is in, Octavius is in, and obviously Mark Antony's in. You could do a casting call, and you could have Mark Antony be this big, tall, powerful, imposing person, and have Lepidus be this little, short, kind of mousy guy. So that when Mark Antony says this line, the audience all goes, yeah, I can see that. Small, unmeritable. Meet to be sent on errands. What's Mark Antony not saying about Lepidus there, but saying about himself? I am not an errand boy. Lepidus, he's an errand boy. Me, I'm a commander. I'm a general. Is it fit the threefold world divided? he should stand one of the three to share it. Really, Octavius? Do you really think he deserves a third of the civilized world? Notice the idea is planning in Octavius' mind. No. Get rid of him, and we divide it into two. He's already thinking. And then get rid of you, and it's mine. Yes?
So do we know how he ended up a part of the triumvirate?
Lepidus?
Yeah. It just kind of jumps into the scene.
Historically, I don't remember.
Okay. It's like, he's weak, he shouldn't be here. Well, why is he there? But, okay.
Well, and bear in mind, Shakespeare, uses history as a starting off point. So there's stuff that occurs in here that isn't accurate. For example, where Caesar is killed.
Yeah.
You've got a footnote that says, Shakespeare places it in one place. It actually occurred somewhere else. Okay? So, Octavius, so you thought him, and took his voice who should be pricked to die in our black sentence and prescription. Octavius, I have seen more days than you. I'm older than you. How much older? Few weeks, few days, few years? No. Mark Antony is old enough to be Octavius' father. Mark Antony is about the same age as Caesar, maybe a little bit younger. But he's at least 15, 16 years older than Octavius. So he's kind of addressing him, older superior to younger inferior. Which, when we get to Antony and Cleopatra, really gets played on. And though we lay these honors on this man, to ease ourselves of diverse slanderous loads, he shall but bear them as the ass bears gold. These honors, what honors is he talking about? Are they giving him titles? No. He means affording him or according him the honor of ruling a third of the world, like we will have. Those are the honors. We are elevating him to be what? Equal with us. He says, but he's nothing more than a beast of burden, to groan and sweat under the business, either led or driven as we point the way. In other words, if there were a job application or a job description and it said, entrepreneurial spirit, self-starters need apply, that wouldn't be Lepidus, according to Mark Antony. Lepidus is what? According to Antony, he's a follower. He's a leader. Excuse me, he's not a leader, he's a listener. He's not the talker. And having brought our treasure where we will, then take we down his load and turn him off. In other words, once we're done with him, once he does what we need from him, which is kind of interesting. I'll leave it there. Something with the next play. Octavius says, well, you may do your will, but he's a tried and valiant soldier. He's proven himself in battle. Yeah, well, so is my horse, Octavius. My horse doesn't shy away from battle, he says. It is a creature I teach to fight, to win, to stop, to run directly on. His corporal motion, governed by my spirit, like Lepidus. Well, isn't that the case with so-called all great men? Isn't it their spirit and women that leads others? Again, I'm not talking moral, good, evil, great, ungreat. Hitler, his great spirit, his powerful spirit did what? It motivated people. Okay? Yeah, he also had the power of the, Gestapo behind him and the SS, and that kind of scared people, etc. Okay? But it was that ability he had to rouse people, which Shakespeare plays with an awful lot. Those are the ones Shakespeare says, we'll see with Hamlet, you got to keep an eye on. Claudius says, madness in great ones unwatched must not go. You got to keep an eye on the great ones. Okay? And in some cases, Lepidus but so. He must be taught and trained and bid go forth. A barren-spirited fellow, one that feeds on objects, arts, and imitations, which out of use instilled by other men begin his fashion. He's saying Lepidus is kind of one. He has to be led. He has to be, he has to be given all the directions how to do something. You can't tell Lepidus, go fix this problem, because he's going to want a list of directions on how to fix it. Okay?
He is a good soldier.
He is a good soldier. He follows orders. But the orders have got to be clear. What else? He says, and talking about not just fashion, but things that are current. Lepidus is what? Just a little bit behind. Okay? If, the current fashion is clothes of 2017, I know we're 2018, Lepidus's fashion is clothes of 2012. He's just a little bit out of date in terms of what he holds to be superior and such. Okay? Don't talk of him but as a property. Something we can move from one place to another and then do away with. Okay? So, move on to 4:2. Brutus, we hear the drums off to the side. Brutus comes in with Lucilius. Who's Lucilius? We've only seen him, I think, once before. A few times in that scene, but he's his boy servant / slave. Okay? And Brutus and Lucilius speak apart, and Brutus says, after Pindarus comes in, I want to, round 18 or 19. Ever know, Lucilius, that is, pay attention here, I'm teaching you, this is a life lesson for when you're older. When love begins to sicken and decay, it useth an enforced ceremony. When love sickens, when a lover is no longer in love, what does that person do? Puts on an act. That's the enforced ceremony. There are no tricks in plain and simple faith. Why? Because plain and simple faith is seen in the face. It's outwardly easily known. But hollow men, like horses hot at hand, make gallant show and promise of their mettle. So, when somebody starts to say, I'm with you all the way, I'll be there, thinking, that's when you got to kind of start not trusting. Okay? So they keep talking. Cassius comes in and with his troops, and Brutus starts speaking to Cassius, and he says, line 41, be content. Be content. Speak your grief softly. Okay, Brutus has his troops. Cassius has now brought in his troops. And Cassius is speaking kind of hotly. I mean, go back a couple lines, 38 or so. Most noble brother, you have done me wrong. He doesn't say that, Brutus, you wronged me, man. No, he says it loudly. Judge me, you gods. Wrong I mine enemies, and if not so, how should I wrong a brother? Have I wronged mine enemies? No, obviously, he's saying. So if I can't wrong my enemies, that is, act dishonorably towards them, how could I act dishonorably towards my brother? So Cassius starts to speak. Brutus, Cassius, shh. Be content means not now, not here. Speak your grief softly. I do know you well before the eyes of our armies here, which should perceive nothing but love from us. Let us not wrangle. Why? Why shouldn't they wrangle in front of their armies? What doesn't he want their armies to think? That there's division in the conspiracy. Okay, we already know there's division where? In the coming triumvirate. It's going to be a duumvirate or diumvirate. Okay? Let us not bid them move away. Let us send the troops away. Then in my tent, Cassius, enlarge your griefs, and I will give you audience. Send the troops off. Come with me to my tent. Then you can vent. He says, then I'll listen to your problems. Okay? So, Cassius issues orders to Pindarus. Pindarus sends him off. And Cassius comes in and says, you've wronged me. That you've wronged me doth appear in this. You've condemned. Noted Lucius Pella for taking bribes. Lucius Pella is a friend of Cassius's. Okay? And he says, you've condemned. Condemned means what? Damned to death, essentially. It's not just you accused him of it. Okay? Even though you knew I took his side. Brutus, you wronged yourself to write such a case. You shouldn't have taken his side. In such a time as this, it is not meet every nice offense should bear his comment. What does he mean in such a time as this? During war. During civil war. We shouldn't be what Cassius says? Okay, divided? Picky about our allies.
We shouldn't be damning someone just for a small offense when there's a bigger picture.
It's the small offense part and the bigger picture part. We shouldn't be nitpicking over little things like, bribery, corruption.
Little things.
Little things.
We'll deal with that later.
Shakespeare, he was not of an age, but for all time, Ben Jonson writes. Compare what was just said with what is today in the news.
Well, it's just a couple of actresses that Donald Trump slapped.
It's just a couple actors. Yeah. I mean, it's just little things, before he was president, etc. So you've got all this stuff going on. Meanwhile, we think the Soviet Union has moles Russia has moles all throughout our election system and are pulling the levers of the American. Okay? I'm sure Trump's attitude is, don't let the little distractions distract. Okay? Brutus. Let me tell you, Cassius, if only we had a Brutus today, let me tell you, Cassius, you yourself were much condemned to have an itching palm. Yeah. The only reason you're willing to let Lucius Pella off, he says, is because you suffer from the same infirmity. To sell and mart your offices for gold to undeservers. Now, I could be entirely wrong here, but I think Shakespeare is making a political statement about the time in which he lived, where members of the aristocracy and members of the court were doing the same thing. Okay?
Could be also making a pass at the Catholic Church as well.
Yeah, though by this time, some of those medieval problems had been taken care of, though not entirely. Okay? But yeah, he could be. Cassius, an itching palm? You know that you are Brutus that speaks this. Or by the God, this speech would be, if you weren't Brutus, you'd be dead. The name of Cassius honors this corruption. What does he mean by honors?
It fits the corruption.
No, it's not that it fits it. Is that what you said? Fits it?
Yeah, it suits. Yeah.
It's like the laurels.
It's
seal of approval.
Yeah, it's a seal of approval. It's kind of the imprimatur. It gilds it. It glosses it over. Why? People respect you, Cassius. Okay. Again, modern day. Almost everything you hear about Robert Mueller in the news is what? The guy who's the special counsel in charge of the Russia corruption, collusion investigation. This guy's supposed to be what? Sterling character. I mean, best of the best, purer than the wind-ridden snow, etc. Okay? But there are, a few little problems with that. He was head of the FBI during the anthrax scare in 2001. The FBI went head over heels, whole hog, after a guy, and they were entirely wrong. And even when it was discovered they were entirely wrong, the guy they went after, if I remember correctly, committed suicide because they destroyed his life. They never admitted error. And yet we know, 100% no, he wasn't the one. Okay? Look up the Whitey Bulger stuff. There's a movie about him in Boston. Mueller was the one in charge of all that. Completely screwed up. Okay? But because head of the FBI, etc., it's kind of like the name glosses over corruption beneath. That's what Shakespeare's getting at there. And chastisement doth therefore hide his head. That is, people don't chastise the corruption beneath you. Why? Because your name kind of cleanses it. Chastisement, that is what? Remember March, the Ides of March, remember. Did not great Julius bleed for justice's sake? In other words, Caesar is dead. Why? Chastisement. What villain touched his body that did stab and not for justice? Well, what is Brutus ascribing to the other conspirators there?
They killed Caesar out of hatred instead of obeying him.
Just the opposite, in fact. He is saying, which of the conspirators did not kill Caesar for justice alone? Okay? The reason I say it's just the opposite is he's ascribing to them what? His motives. Noble people think other people act nobly. What are we told about Brutus? Mark Antony, the noblest Roman of them all. He ascribes nobility to others. Why? Because he is noble. So he ascribes to the other conspirators that same nobility. Did Cassius kill Caesar out of a sense of justice? No. Why did Cassius kill? Why did Cassius stab? He was jealous. Caesar got power and he didn't. That's what he did. Okay? What? Shall one of us that struck the foremost man of all this world? Notice what Brutus is saying there. Caesar was above me. Caesar was better than me. Caesar was in front of me. But for supporting robbers, shall we now contaminate our fingers with base blood? We dared touch him. And now should those same fingers that touch him take bribes under the table and sell the mighty space of our large honors for as much trash as may be grasped thus? Trash, your footnote tells you, money. Why? Brutus is what kind of Roman? What quote-unquote religious beliefs does he have? And I don't mean, which god does he favor? He's like Horatio in Hamlet. He's a Stoic. What do the Stoics believe? One, when you die, that's it. You don't have a soul that goes on. Okay? Two, because you don't have a soul that goes on, you don't have to worry about divine punishment or reward. Therefore, what is important? What you do here, and what did Mark Antony say in the beginning of his funeral speech? The good that man does is oft interred with them. The evil lives on after. Therefore, do evil? No. Therefore, jump to Old English, the Anglo-Saxon period, and what do almost all the Old English poets say? Earn a good name.
Deeds.
Louder?
Deeds.
Deeds. Do glorious deeds. Okay? That's what Brutus is saying. Why? Because money is trash. It dies here. It doesn't buy you any fame in the future. I'd rather be a dog and bathe the moon than such a Roman. I would rather be a beast than a human being. Bait not, don't tempt me, man. I am so close to letting you have it, is what Cassius is saying. I'll not endure it. You forget yourself to hedge me in. What does it mean to hedge me in? Yeah, you're cornering me. You're telling me what? What to do. Well, what did we see with Octavius and Antony? What was Antony saying? That's what we do with Lepidus. We merely hedge him in. We merely lead him on. I am a soldier. I, older in practice, abler than yourself to make conditions. Cassius is now saying, like Antony said to Octavius, I'm older than you. Abler than yourself. What does that mean, abler than yourself? To make conditions.
I have more authority to say what the rules are.
Exactly. Okay. Brutus is going to later on say something which is telling us he interprets what Cassius says here to mean better than you. I'm a better soldier than you. Cassius goes, me? I never said that. All right. So, they keep talking. Brutus, 38. Away, slight man. Little person. Cassius, is it possible? Must I give way and room to your rash choler? Rash, your impetuous anger. What's he saying? You're not thinking. The true Stoic does what?
Always thinks before he acts.
Always thinks. Never does what? Never acts out of passion. A true Stoic tries to live life like this. Even keel. Doesn't get angry. Doesn't get happy. Why? Because once if you live life like this, notice you're what? You're high, you're low. You're high, you're low. You're never in the middle. Hamlet talks about this with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They say, we're neither high nor low, meaning fortune's favor, because there they use the image of fortune's wheel, nor fortune's disfavor, I guess. And they say, faith, her private's we. We're around the middle of fortune. Means you're not going up, you're not going down. Things are on a nice, smooth, even keel. Oh, you got! He's just getting more and more fired up. Finally, Brutus says, 52, you say you're a better soldier. Let it appear so. Make your vaunting true, and it shall please me well. For mine own part, I shall be glad to learn. Prove it to me. You wronged me every way. I said elder. I didn't say better. Whatever. That's what, if you did, I care not. Doesn't matter. Brutus has kind of put up a wall. In one ear, out the other. Why? What does he come to realize, maybe in the space of this conversation with Cassius? Somebody who's like this, you can't do what?
Be rational
Argue with.
You can't be rational with, you can't argue with. Okay, because they're just going to fly off, everywhere. Cassius, bottom of that page. Do not presume too much upon my love. I may do that I shall be sorry for. I might strike and then be sorry later. You've done that you should be sorry for. That is, helped the bribes. There is no terror, Cassius, in your threats, for I am armed so strong in honesty that they pass by me as the idle wind. Your threats are like nothing, which I respect not. I did send to you for certain. Now we finally get at what is really bothering Brutus. I sent to you for money. For what purpose? To pay our armies, which you denied me, for I can raise no money by vile means. What does he mean by vile means? Bribery? Corruption? By heaven, I had rather coin my heart and drop my blood for drachmas than to wring from, notice, it's not just bribery and corruption, than to wring from the hard hands of peasants their vile trash by any indirection. He's not going to tax the people who live on the properties he owns. Why? Well, for one reason, it's not their battle. They just want what out of life? Let me live my own little life, get by, and die. They're not concerned with the great and powerful. I did send to you for gold to pay my legions, which you denied me. Was that done like Cassius? That is, was that honorable? Should I have answered Caius Cassius so? When Marcus Brutus grows so covetous to lock such rascal counters from his friends, be ready, gods, with all your thunderbolts. In other words, when I get to such a point that I have to come and beg, essentially, from you, kill me now. Not going to do it. I denied you, God. You did. I did not. You did. I don't like your faults. A friendly eye could never see such faults. A friendly eye, Cassius says, does what? Overlooks the imperfections in one's friends. Brutus, flatterers would not, though they do appear as huge as high Olympus. What's the they? The faults. A flatterer ignores faults, he's saying. Modern example. Sean Hannity, Donald Trump. Sean Hannity is a cheerleader for Donald Trump does nothing wrong. Nothing wrong in Sean Hannity's views or eyes, whatever. Just as, let's go to the other side of the aisle, Barack Obama, MSNBC, never did anything wrong. And you could go back and forth. It doesn't matter which party because every party has their sycophantic supporters. Okay? Brutus is saying what? I'm not a sycophant. I don't gloss over. Cassius, come, Antony. Young Octavius, come. Revenge yourselves alone on Cassius, for Cassius is a weary of the world, hated by one he loves, that is Brutus, braved by his brother. Braved means opposed by his brother, checked like a bondman, all his faults observed, set in a notebook, learned to count by rote. In other words, what have you been doing, Brutus? You've been taking notes about all my faults, writing them all down so that you can read them back out to me? Well, if he has, would that be such a bad thing? If Brutus is trying to get Cassius to be honorable, wouldn't that be like holding the mirror up to nature and saying, you damn fool, change? Brutus, sheathe your dagger. Be angry when you will, it shall have scope. It, your anger, shall have scope. What does he mean by scope? Free reign. put your dagger away. He's implying Cassius has pulled out his dagger. Why? Because he's going to go after Brutus? No, he's going to kill himself. Put it away. And you can do what? Rage, scream, yell as much as you want. Just get it all out. Do what you will, dishonor shall be humor. That is, I'm going to kind of humor you. I'm going to let you. 116. 113. Hath Cassius lived to be but mirth and laughter to his Brutus, when grief and blood ill-tempered vexeth him? Grief, he says, and blood ill-tempered, that is ill-mixed. He's talking about the four humors. Okay? Cassius is saying, am I merely mirth and laughter to you when I can't control myself? That's what he's talking about. He's so overcome with grief and his natural disposition, his ill-tempered, ill-mixed blood. Brutus, when I spoke that, I was ill-tempered too. That's Brutus's version of, I apologize. I spoke how? Out of passion. I didn't follow my own advice.
Even so, his passion is like...
Yeah. Compared to Cassius's, which is this, Brutus is kind of like that. Do you confess so much? Notice, Cassius, honestly, give me your hand. And they shake. Brutus, and my heart too. In other words, Cassius, I love you. We're friends. We shouldn't let these things divide us. Oh, Brutus, etc., etc. Okay? So, poet comes in, and the poet says, for shame, you generals, 128 or so. What do you mean? Love and be friends, as two such men should be, for I've seen more years, I'm sure, than ye. I'm older than both of you, and you guys got to cut it out. Why? Because the poet's been out with the troops, and he's, heard some stuff. Okay? 143. Cassius, I'm sick of many griefs. I got a lot on my plate. There's a lot wearing me down. Cassius, of your philosophy you make no use if you give place to accidental evils. Of your philosophy, your stoicism, what? You're a hypocrite. If you let accidental evils, chance, do what? Lead you away from this. Okay? Yeah, but what does Brutus just said? Many griefs. See, the problem with Stoicism is it doesn't have an answer for when the whole world is crashing about you. It's kind of hard to maintain the stiff upper lip. Brutus, no man bears sorrow better. In other words, no. I'm able to take, because of my Stoic belief system, sorrows better than any man alive. And how does he finish that little speech? Portia is dead. His wife has died. That's one of the many griefs. So that kind of then informs us a little bit about why he, was a little outgoing, let's say, with Cassius earlier. He's trying to do what? Maintain his composure, and his wife just died. How hard do you think that is to maintain composure? Portia? She's dead. How escaped I killing when I crossed you so? How am I still alive? Okay. Upon what sickness? Impatient of my absence. In grief that young Octavius with Mark Antony hath made themselves so strong, for with her death that tidings came. With this she fell distract, and her attendants absent, swallowed fire. And you got the footnote about Plutarch's lives. She, according to Plutarch, took hot coals in her mouth and swallowed them. I mean, if you're going to go out with a gusto. I mean, who's going to top that, you know? And died, duh. Even so, oh, ye mortal gods. So, let's not talk about her. Why? Because when he talks about her, it makes him think about her, and then it makes it harder to stay on this even keel. Okay? So, Messala comes in and says that 172 and following, Octavius, Antony, and Lepidus have put to death 100 senators. The footnote says it's something like 70 or 75. Okay? Cicero, is he one of them? This is the famous Cicero, by the way. Yep, he is. Cicero's dead. Had you your letters from your wife, my lord? No, Messala. In other words, and Cassius is probably going, don't talk about Portia, you know. Well, that's strange. Why ask you? Hear you out of her and yours? No. Now you're, tell me. In other words, come on, you know something. Then like a Roman, bear the truth, I tell for certain she is dead, and by strange manner. We must die, Messala. With meditating that she must die once, I have the patience to endure it now. In other words, you only die once, I can endure it now. Even so, great men, great losses should endure. I have as much of this in art as you, but yet my nature could not bear it so. What do you think of marching to Philippi? Brutus asks. Okay. So, Brutus is doing what? He starts focusing on the task at hand. Octavius, Mark Antony, Lepidus. See, what did Brutus and the other conspirators think would happen once Julius Caesar was killed?
Business as usual.
Meaning, we go back to the good old days of the Republic. What did Luke Skywalker think would happen once the Emperor was dead? Back to the Republic. Only problem is, once somebody gets a taste of power, once the genie's out of the bottle, kind of hard to get him to go back in, right? So, Cassius, no, I don't think so. I think we should let them come to us. Brutus, why? 'Tis better the enemy seek us, so shall he waste his means. That is, if the enemy has to march to us, what happens? He uses up his supplies, his men get tired, while we, lying still, are full of rest, defense, and nimbleness. Brutus, yeah, but there are better reasons to go. The people twixt Philippi and this ground do stand but in forced affection, for they have grudged us contribution. Grudged us. They unwillingly contributed to our cause. So, if they did that unwillingly, how willingly are they just going to stand by and let Caesar and such, let me rephrase that. What are they going to do when Octavius, the new Caesar, Octavius Caesar, Lepidus and Mark Antony march through? They're going to give them supplies and aid and join. In other words, if we wait for them to come to us, their army will be even larger than it is now. Ours? Is ours going to grow? No. By them shall make a fuller number up, come on, refreshed, new added, encouraged, from which advantage shall we cut him off if we face him at Philippi. We will cut off that advantage if we march. Cassius, hear me? Brutus, no. You must note beside that we have tried the utmost of our friends. What's he mean?
That's a lot.
How much is the lot? We've asked the most, as much as we can. They've given all they're able to give. They've helped all they're able to. Our legions are brim full. You know, overflowing cup. It's right there at the top. Our cause is ripe. That is, people still have fresh in their minds. Caesar was ambitious. The enemy, however, increaseth every day. He's saying, We have to strike now. Why? Because tomorrow, our cows will be a little bit less ripe. Overripe. Our numbers will start to decline. He's saying, we're up here. If we wait, our fortunes will start to fall. Okay? So, we're going to skip a bunch. Go on to the end of that scene. 269 and following. Brutus is in his room. Lucius is there. Lucius is playing a flute or recorder or something to help Brutus sleep. Lucius falls asleep. Notice, as we've seen with previous quote-unquote rulers, what difficulty is Brutus having? He can't sleep. Why? His mind's a little preoccupied. Okay? O murderous slumber, layest thou thy leaden mace upon my boy that plays thee music? Gentle knave, good night. I will not do thee so much wrong to wake thee. If thou dost nod, thou breakst thy instrument. I'll take it from thee. So he moves the instrument, and Caesar's ghost comes in. And Caesar's ghost says, to thee shalt thou see me, to thee, Brutus, why are you here? To tell thee thou shalt see me at Philippi. When then I shall see thee again at Philippi. All right, I'll see you at Philippi. What does Caesar mean?
You're joining me.
You're going to be one of me. You're going to be a ghost too. Okay? So, 5-1. We see Octavius and Antony speaking, and Brutus goes and has a parle with Octavius and Antony. And Octavius says, Octavius draws his sword because he thinks Brutus is there to kill him. And Brutus says, 57, Caesar, thou canst not die by traitors' hands unless thou bringst them with thee. In other words, I'm no traitor. So I hope. I was not born to die on Brutus' sword. Oh, if thou wert the noblest of thy strain, young man, thou couldst not die more honorable. In other words, there's no better way to die than Captain America killing you. Captain Roman, killing you. Captain Rome, killing you. Cassius, a peevish schoolboy, worthless of such honor. Okay, now notice what Cassius says there. Not about the worthless of such honor. What's he talking? He's talking about Octavius Caesar's age. How old is he? Teens. In Antony and Cleopatra, Antony's going to make the comment about Caesar being beardless. And he's going to say something, and Caesar's going to come out one scene, Octavius is going to come out one scene, and he's going to, he called me boy! Like, oh, that's it. Antony dies because he belittled me, Okay? So, a lot of talking goes on, which we're going to skip because I want to try and, we won't get to Hamlet, but, Cassius and Brutus speak at the end of 5-1, and Cassius says, if we lose this, if we lose Philippi, that's it. This is the last battle we ever fight. Okay? What are you then determined to do? He asked Brutus. Even by the rule of that philosophy by which I did blame Cato for the death which he did give himself. Cato, another Stoic, Brutus says what? I will die by my own hand. So according to Stoic philosophy, according to Epicurus, the founder of the Stoic philosophy, okay, suicide was an honorable and noble end. Better than what? Defeat. Better than dying at your enemy's hands. Okay? So he says, I know not how, but I do find it cowardly and vile for fear of what might fall, so to prevent the time of life. Arming myself with patience to say the providence of some higher powers that govern us below. When the time comes, I'll know when it is, Cassius. Okay, so if we lose this battle, you're contented to be led in triumph through the streets? No, Cassius. Cassius didn't understand what Brutus was talking about. No. Think not, thou noble Roman, that ever Brutus will go bound to Rome. He bears too great a mind. But this same day must end that work, the Ides of March begun. Well, what was that great work that began on the Ides of March? Louder?
Killing Caesar.
Okay.
Trying to change the government back.
Trying to go back to the Republic. But I think he's also saying that's when he began dying. When he killed Caesar, he killed himself. It's just he's been a dead man walking for this period of time. Whether we shall meet again, I know not. Therefore, everlasting farewell take. For where forever and forever farewell, Cassius. If we do meet again, we shall smile. If not, parting was well made. Okay? So, skip 5.2, go to 5.3. We see Cassius, Titinius, and Pindarus. Okay? Pindarus tells Cassius, flee. Mark Antony's coming. Cassius says, this hill is far enough. That is, I don't need to flee from here. Mark Antony can't reach here. Okay? Cassius tells Titinius, take my horse, hide thy spurs, go up to those troops, and here again, and return, that I may rest assured whether yon troops are friend or enemy. Go off to that group of troops out there, and then come back and tell me, friends or enemies? Titinius rides. Okay? And he says, Pindarus, go up higher on that hill and tell me what you see. And Pindarus says, Titinius is enclosed round about with horsemen that make to him on the spur, yet he spurs on. Now they're almost on him. Now Titinius, now some light. Oh, he lights too. That is, some of the other horsemen get off their horses. Titinius gets down off his. He's saying, shout. That is, we hear a shout off stage. Okay? Now, obviously, what is Pindarus not aware of that we find out later? Is it that Titinius has defected? No. These are friends of Titinius, as we're going to be told. Okay? And hark, they shout for joy. That is, Pindarus, they hear the shout. Pindarus assumes Titinius is taken. Okay? Cassius, I don't need to hear anymore. And he asks Pindarus to do what for him? Hold my sword. Why? So I can fall on it. So, he holds the sword. Cassius falls on it and says, Caesar, thou art revenged, even with the sword that killed thee. Pindarus, so I am free. Notice, Pindarus is what? Slave to Cassius. Yet would not so have been, durst I have done my will. O Cassius, far from this country, Pindarus shall run wherever Romans shall take note. In other words, I'm out of the Roman Empire. Is he actually free? No. So, in comes Titinius wearing a garland of laurel with Messala. But change, Titinius, for Octavius is overthrown by Noble Brutus' power, as Cassius's legions are by Antony. In other words, Brutus has defeated Octavius's legions. Cassius's legions have been overthrown by Antony. So what's happened? It's a draw. Neither side wins. They go in and they see Cassius on the ground. And Titinius says, when Messala asks, is not that he? No, this was he, Messala. But Cassius says no more. Notice, Shakespeare loves that kind of little dialogue. Well, isn't that Cassius? No, that's not, because Cassius isn't there anymore. That's the container of Cassius. O setting sun, as in thy red rays thou dost sink tonight, so in his red blood Cassius' day is set. The son of Rome has said, our day is gone, clouds due, dangers. Okay. O hateful error, melancholy's child, why dost thou show to the apt thoughts of men the things that are not? What was the hateful error? What Pindarus saw and related. Okay? So, let's see here. Messala leaves, and so we have Titinius alone on the stage, and he says, why didst thou send me forth, brave Cassius? Did I not meet thy friends? You should be still alive. These would have helped thee. Did not they put on my brows this wreath of victory, and bid me give it thee? Didst thou not hear their shouts? Alas, thou hast misconstrued everything. But hold, he and places the garland, and then he does what? This is a Roman's part. Come, Cassius' sword, and find Titinius' heart. He falls on Cassius' sword. Why? He would rather die than be without his Lord. We see the same thing at the end of Hamlet. Horatio says, I am more a noble Roman than a Dane. Because he gets ready to kill himself after Hamlet dies. Just before Hamlet dies. And Hamlet says, no, because Horatio is going to drink from the poisoned cup. And Hamlet says, poison do thy work, and drinks it all. He tells Horatio, you've got to live on. Why? To tell the story. You've got to tell the true story. Okay? So, Brutus comes in. O Julius Caesar, thou art mighty yet. Line 94. Thy spirit walks abroad and turns our swords and our own proper entrails. In other words, damn you, Caesar. Killing us still from beyond the grave. Okay? So, Antony speaks with Lucilius. Let's see here. Yeah, after Brutus leaves the stage, and Lucilius responds to Antony's, where is he? That is Brutus. Safe, Antony. Brutus is safe enough. I dare assure thee, no enemy shall ever take alive the noble Brutus. The gods defend him from so great a shame. When you do find him, or alive or dead, he will be found like Brutus, like himself. Antony, go find Brutus and do what? Keep this man safe. Give him all kindness. I'd rather have such men, my friends and enemies. Go on. Okay? Brutus comes back in. And what does Brutus do? Well, he talks with Cletus, Dardanus, etc. And then he says to Volumnius, he asks Volumnius to hold his sword so that he can run on it. Volumnius, 29. That's not an office for a friend. Friends don't kill friends, you know. So Brutus then addresses Strato. Countrymen, my heart doth joy that yet in all my life I found no man, but he was true to me. I shall have glory by this losing day more than Octavius and Mark Antony by this vile conquest shall attain unto. That is, Octavius and Mark Antony, yeah, they're going to win. But it will be a vile victory. I, he says, will attain a glory. So fare you well at once, for Brutus's tongue hath almost ended his life's history. In other words, I'm almost done. Night hangs upon mine eyes, my bones would rest, but have labored to attain this hour. So, Strato holds the sword. And Brutus runs on it and says, Caesar, line 50, now be still. I killed not thee with half so good a will. Octavius comes in, Messala comes in, and Messala asks Strato, where's thy master? Free from the bondage you are in, Messala. Messala had been not conspirator, but compatriot to Brutus. Now he's kind of bound. He's a captive. The conquerors can but make a fire of him, for Brutus only overcame himself, and no man else hath honor by his death. Octavius, all that serve to Brutus, I will entertain them. In other words, all you who honorably and nobly serve Brutus, you can now serve me. I'm not going to kill you. Messala, how died my master, Strato? I held the sword and he did run on it. Octavius, take him to follow thee, that did the latest service to my master. Latest. Shakespeare loves that. It's common in his day, the last. This was the noblest Roman of them all. All the conspirators, save only he did that they did in envy of great Caesar. What is envy? Now, in Shakespeare's day, they heard that word, 7 deadly sins. Pride, anger, lust, envy. What's envy? Is it merely wanting what somebody else wants? No. It's anger that somebody else has received something that one believes one deserves. Therefore, it's not only wanting that, but it's hoping for that other person's downfall. Okay? Antony says all of the other conspirators were envious of Caesar, but not Brutus. Antony says Brutus acted how? Entirely.
Honorably.
Out of honor. Out of, as Brutus said, the general good. He wasn't acting for himself. Envy is all about self. All right? He only in a general honest thought and common good to all made one of them. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. In other words, he was the model to be emulated. Okay? So, question. We are going to jump into Hamlet quickly for a few minutes. But question. We started this whole discussion with Bevington's assertion in the introduction that there are 2 protagonists in this play. Even though it's called The Tragedy of Julius Caesar, it's just Julius Caesar in the title page here, okay? But in the first folio, it's got 2 different titles to it. It is The Tragedy of Julius Caesar, and in the table of contents, The Life and Death of Julius Caesar. So it's kind of about Julius Caesar. But Caesar's only in half the play. Brutus is in the whole play, beginning to end. Who does Shakespeare favor? Does he favor one over the other?
Brutus, I would say.
Brutus? Who thinks it's Brutus? Okay, who thinks it's Caesar? Nobody's willing to raise their hands. Okay, maybe nobody does. Why Brutus?
He definitely has, I think, the strongest ideals.
Okay.
He's, the honor and stuff like that.
Great ideals, honorable, noble, all that kind of stuff. And yet, what did Brutus do? He killed the quote-unquote leader. What did we see in Richard II?
The same thing with Hotspur, even though he refused prisoners to King Henry IV, even after his death, he was still seen as
Okay.
a mirror of honor.
What did Bolingbroke, let's say through Exton, possibly, do to Richard II? He killed him. And then what do we see Henry IV talk about just before he dies at the end of Henry IV Part 2, or in Henry IV Part 2? He's still what? Riddled with guilt. Okay? Does Shakespeare ever really support killing the monarch, killing one's leader. He always, it's dangerous. Well, one of the reasons because it would be very hard to write a play supporting executing the monarch when Queen Elizabeth is still alive. Because she was a nasty piece of work, man. She'd cut your fingers off, have your tongue cut out, put you on the rack, the whole 9 yards. Okay? So, I mean, you've got this divinely ordained leadership idea in Shakespeare's day, but then you also have this notion of if that divinely inspired or divinely ordained leader is not acting rightly, is it appropriate at times to take action into one's own hands? Again, Brutus thinks solely, according to Mark Antony, of what? The good of the people. Do we see people in the Henry IV plays, Richard II, deposing Richard II for the good of the people?
No.
What does Bolingbroke say when he comes back? I just want my lands and titles. And then it's kind of implied Northumberland and others put him up to it. Okay? So even today, 400 years after the play was written, still a lot of questions. Who does Shakespeare side with? Does he side with? Is Caesar portrayed horribly in this play? Does Caesar come across as a despot? No, he doesn't. Is he a Hitler? No, he's not. So says who? Brutus. Antony doesn't ascribe ambition to Caesar. Brutus does. And it's for that ambition that he has to die. Do we see Caesar become emperor here? No. He turns down what? 3 times. He turns the crown down 3 times. Okay. He has to die. Why? According to Brutus. So he can't become king. Sure.
Could the argument be made that Shakespeare may be for killing the monarch, but only in such a case as where it seems like God is not with them, quote unquote, as it were? Because everyone thinks that the monarch and rule is going against either the divine providence or whatever, that it's like Richard II, he was starting to go a little crazy.
Yeah, it's possible. Because, we could look at another play, we're not reading it, but Richard III. Where Richard III, in Shakespeare's portrayal, he's rotten. He's just vile and evil. Okay? There's a reason for that, though. Richard III was defeated by the grandfather of the current monarch. So everything about that person has to be portrayed in a negative light. Why? Because you can't cast any aspersions about Henry VII. Okay? Amelia?
I was going to say, I don't think that Shakespeare is necessarily siding with either of Brutus or Caesar, but I think that he's showing that even the most honorable of men can be deceived by those around him.
Did Brutus want to join the conspirators at the beginning of the play? No. How does Cassius get him involved? Even the most noblest Roman of them all can what? Have that ego stroked. Okay. Jump to, a few minutes, Hamlet. How many of you have read Hamlet before? Almost all of you. Okay. Shakespeare doesn't invent Hamlet. There's a play called the Hamlet that was around prior to Shakespeare's writing this, but we don't know what it is. It is no longer in existence. But the very idea of Hamlet goes back probably as far back as about 900 or so. There is a character named ENGL in Saxo Grammaticus's History of the Kings of Norway, or Denmark, okay? And it's the same story. Okay? What is the modern version, relatively modern, version of Hamlet? Lion King. It's it in a nutshell, okay? Different names, different setting, but it's Lion King. So, the play opens with Bernardo and the Watch. Who's there? Why does it open with that question? What does the question imply? What is going on when someone asks that question? What are they doing? Keeping watch. What else?
Startled. There might be something going on.
Startled might be something going on. What else? No? Mystery. Okay.
Making sure they're not
Now I want to get back to expand on the keeping watch. They're observing, they're looking, they're watching, they're seeing. Okay? This play is about observation. It's about watching others. It's about spying. Ophelia is going to call Hamlet the observed of all observers. Okay? Think about what that means. Hamlet essentially lives inside the panopticon. Jeremy Bentham, late 18th, early 19th century. Okay? Means everything people in Elsinore, where the castle is, are being watched. It's almost like there's cameras everywhere. And what is she saying? Hamlet is the most observed of all the observers. Everybody's a watcher. So what does that imply? Everybody's doing what? Which is a form of, let me rephrase it, which is a form of not what? They're not minding their own business. They're sticking their noses in everybody else's business. And within the course of the play, what happens to people who stick their noses in other people's business? You get stabbed through a curtain. You get hoisted by your own petard. Okay? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So, they see the ghost. A lot of speeches here, we're going to skip them. Okay? And Marcellus is kind of like, does anybody know why we're doing this watch? What's going on? Why are we having to watch the battlements every night? Okay? And Horatio gives a long speech beginning around line 83 or so, and it says, yeah, I can explain why. Well, remember before the last king died, Hamlet Sr., he did what? He defeated Fortinbras of Norway, or Fortinbras if you want, of Norway. Okay? So now Fortinbras of Norway is dead, and his young son, also named Fortinbras, is now king. And so the current king, Claudius, is doing what? Putting out the sentinels. Why? Because we hear young Fortinbras wants to do what? Get revenge. Why? This is Germanic society. You kill my father, I'm going to come after you. Okay? You kill my king, I'm going to come after you. Okay? So he says, young Fortinbras, line 100, of unimproved metal, hot and full, hath in the skirts of Norway here and there sharked up a list of lawless. In other words, he's come up with a bunch of excuses for attacking. Okay? So Bernardo says, I think that's why this vision we just saw is here. What shape did it come in? It looked like the former king. How? Armed, cap a pee, head to toe. It's like he just can't give up. He just can't give up the kingdom. He's got to defend us from it. Okay? 116, Horatio. A mote it is to trouble the mind's eye. A mote, a speck of dust to trouble the mind's eye. Notice what that speck of dust is doing. It's focusing the mind's eye solely on it and not letting the mind's eye do what? Look at the bigger problems. Well, what's one of the bigger problems? How about the fact that the dead king's brother married the dead king's wife within 2 months? That's you. Okay? So the ghost comes in. Horatio tries to speak to it. And then we get the king come in. Act 1, Scene 2. And I know we're almost out of time. With his train and everything. And this I thought Kenneth Branagh's version did a pretty good job of. Okay? I generally don't like the Kenneth Branagh version. I don't like any version of it. Hamlet. Take that back. The Richard Burton version, 1964, there's a film of it, and it's kind of like a final, it's not a dress rehearsal, but they're kind of in the costuming that they're going to wear. Some of them are released. Richard Burton's all in black, and it's just fantastic because, one, it's Richard Burton when he's young and not old, fat, and drunk. Okay? And two, it's Richard Burton's voice. If you're not familiar with who Richard Burton is, look it up on YouTube. Okay? But it's a full version of the play before it ran on Broadway. It's fantastic. So, the king comes out, and he talks about his marriage to line 8, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress, emphasizing the joining together, to this warlike state, have we as 'twere with a defeated joy, with an auspicious and a dropping eye, with mirth and funeral, with dirge and marriage, in equal scale, weighing delight and dole, taken to wife. In other words, we were sorry that our brother was dead, but now we're happy because we've married his wife. In other words, she brought joy to our lives, and we brought joy to her life, etc., etc. Okay? Nor have we herein barred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along. In other words, and you all agreed to it. That's important. The king doesn't say, so let it be written, so let it be done, kind of a thing. I got my counselor's advice, and they approved it. Okay? So, ambassadors come in, he deals with them, they leave. He tells Laertes, you have leave to go, back off to Paris, and then he addresses line 64. Yeah, we'll stop there. But now my cousin Hamlet and my son. Notice, cousin, son. Cousin, relation. Son, stepson. Hamlet's not happy.